everything in business.
Double count.
Yeah.
Plus, right.
Plus.
I don't know if we can get
I
it.
tell him,
I need to learn how to use
this
it.
meeting is 20 years tonight.
Really?
Yeah, but either way.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, right.
Okay, everybody, we're live.
We're live?
All right.
All right, let's call this meeting to order. Rob, you wanna do roll call?
Roll call, Whit,
Jay Harold?
Jay on the phone?
He's excused.
Okay.
Yep.
Dean Matthews,
Here.
Gayla Pock here, Bill Thompson here, and Robert Dobry on here, and our attorney, Keenan Fuller.
Here. Any changes or additions to the agenda tonight? Okay, so we turn to public, obviously. Nobody?
Not yet,
Not yet?
but we will keep track of the messages if we get any.
We'll go to the consent agenda. Any discussion or anything on the consent agenda?
The only thing I had on the minutes was, he wanted to say that Jay Harrell was on Zoom. I noticed that we made the notation to talk Mike was on Zoom last time. That's the only issue I had with it, and that's certainly not a big deal.
I can adjust that easily.
Were you on Zoom, Tom? You were on Zoom?
Yeah, that's what you said, Gail.
Yes, he was on Zoom last,
Yes.
Yes.
and the
But
minutes
they-
reflect that, and if they reflect that one was on Zoom and Jay Harrell was also on Zoom, to be consistent, we probably should say that Jay was on. But like I said, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. All right, if that's all we have, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. We'll move on. SHS report.
Pretty short report, but I think the main thing to talk about is the success of getting RTU 1 unit in on time and, without any problems. And we obviously ordered up some weather to make sure it balanced out and worked well, and what I have heard, it did work really well. So well done, Rob, and the rest of the crew for making sure it came in on time and functional. So I think we're all pretty worried about, you know construction better than anyone.
Yeah.
These things don't go as smoothly, and I think with all the discussions and maybe a little bit of pressure that we put on none, it came out, it worked out well. So good to hear that it did that. Talked to Cody this morning, who had a case at 7:30. He said the humidity was at a great level. I think we had a little help, but but everything seems to be working. And so sounds like Tony's team in that part of the hospital stepped up to the plate, got things up and running clean, and back into the surgery mode. So well done on that.
Yeah.
And I think really the next thing we'll discuss is, or the next thing we need to do is discuss what the next projects are when we meet as a facility committee and when the SHS board meets as well. See what we want to do next. So that's pretty much what I have to offer.
Yes.
Tony?
Not a whole lot else to report, but just a couple things to let you know about. We signed an agreement with Classic Air to have a helicopter house on our pad full-time, so that'll be happening in December. So we're real pleased to get that going. I think that's going to be good for the community. And we didn't have to buy the helicopter, so that was even better. So, but they'll be here 24/7, 365 as a crew on site, and so that'll be a really good service available for the local community. So do that.
How many people will they bring all their employees in, or will they be hiring any local staff that you're aware of?
No, honestly, I don't know. They'll have a 3-person crew, all the time.
Yeah.
Here locally, but I don't know if they already have the staff for that or not.
They may hire somebody that fills up the chopper, puts gas in the chopper
Yeah.
locally.
They, but it'll be, like I said, it'll be designated like our helicopter, won't have Classic Air, it'll be Southwest Health Systems, logo on it, and so it'll be a good deal for everybody all the way around. Otherwise, Rick will fill you in on the finances, things are going pretty well there. Still got a couple of recruitment challenges where we had a surgeon recruited that backed out on us in the last minute, and so we're back recruiting for another surgeon and still working for OBGYN, trying to find somebody in that. That's it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Keep going back to the helicopters.
Yep.
The third time's gonna be the charm?
I hope.
So do I.
I hope. They seem pretty confident that they've got the volume to do it for once.
We had the volume to do it the last two times, but the people that were running it didn't know what they were doing.
These guys have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
When I lived over in southeast Utah, I don't know, a decade or more ago, they were who we used over there, so,
The problem was not here, it was not them. It was here at SHS, the people that were running it, that part of it. The first helicopter we got in here, we paid to have paid for the helicopter and paid to cruise direct from this hospital. But the people that were running from this hospital had no idea what the heck they were doing. And after the first year, they finally realized, we can't do this anymore. Well, no kidding. We tried to help them straighten it out. Keenan wasn't here then. Kelly was on the board then, and we worked with them trying to get it straightened out so we could have one here stationed right here.
sounds like
Just unfortunately, it wasn't being handled right.
sounds like these guys are a step ahead.
It sounds like it is, but that's good.
Okay. Rick, how's your financials?
Yeah, thank you. Strong patient cash collections, 4.8 for July. We did decrease operating cash by about 1.3 million from June, and that's because we had 3 payrolls in there. The investments came back because of strong market, and collecting well. Our gross AR did decrease by about 947,000. Inventory was flat. Prepaid expenses, if you guys remember, a lot of our insurance premiums re-up in July 1st. So we did book a significant amount, over $300,000 for prepaid insurance related to D&O policies, PNC, stuff like that. Our long-term investments did show an increase of about $80,000. Fixed assets, we did place a few assets into service, about $60,000 worth of assets. However, we had depreciation of about $376,000, so that's why they declined $300,000. Accounts payable did increase by about $435,000 because of where we timed everything. Payroll liabilities, they did decrease by $607,000, primarily as a result of 3 payroll payouts in July. Current liabilities decreased by roughly $600,000 as a result of us booking $60,000 of a Medicaid cost report payable and recording $800,000 related to our payment plan, payment protection plan. So that's how everything went. Revenue over expense was an operating loss of $420,000. However, our year-to-date is positive at about $773,000. EBITDA for July was $100,000, and year-to-date EBITDA improved to $4.3 million. And we're chasing on a 2020 budget of $6.24 million. So we're well on our way to hitting that. Again, we did see our clinic revenues coming back with some of the providers that Carrie's been able to recruit. We did see, more of a change in balance. We're seeing more of our Medicare patients come back. So we had a slight payer mix change. And total net revenue was about $300,000 in excess of budget. Provider salaries, slightly above budget by $73,000. We did pay some recruitment bonuses out that we have, with some providers that have just come in, as well as adding Dr. Dennis Lewis. And staff salaries were above budget by about $77K. Part of that is a result of our COLA increase, second half of the COLA increase of 1.5%. Contract labor continues to be below budget. Benefits were pretty much right on point of what we budgeted. Medical specialist fees went up slightly, $88,000, and that's based on providers serving on committees. And then we did have a few of our surgeons that are on call, things like that. We paid some OB call, and we had some other things. We did an IT migration to get us out of the basement. Some of those invoices hit in the month of July. Repairs and maintenance, a lot of the project related to the OB install hit that, so that raised up that repairs and maintenance. Interest expense was in par with our amortization schedule. Again, we talked about depreciation being about $377,000. The donations, again, the result of MCHD sales tax. We did receive an emergency management grant of $28,000 and a school-based clinic of $6,000. And the emergency management grant, basically something that Matt Lindsay writes. So we got $56,000 of equipment. The grant covers 28. We pay 28,000, so that's positive. The narrative came on page 6 and 7 from our balance sheet and income statement. If y'all have any questions on that. Okay, Fred, on the next page, and everybody, we have page 8 relates to, what is part of the sales tax and what is part of the, what the hospital pays for the debt instrument. So $857,000 from MCHD and about 1.25 from hospital operations. Again, July is not a end of quarter month. This shows where we're at, days cash on hand at 105 days, and where it gives you kind of a quick summary, not quick and dirty cash flows. This is a spreadsheet we send out every Friday that shows you where we spent some of the monies. Statistically speaking, if you guys want to know where we are, that's on page 10. Again, not seeing a lot of, saw fewer patient days, things like that. Our bursts, believe it or not, we're 8 bursts over where we were last year, about 14 ahead of budget. And we think we're going to have probably a COVID increase in Q4 and probably Q1 of next year. So we're looking at that, and that's even being down 1 OB. ED visits are coming back. Cardiac rehab, that's the only department we really haven't opened, so there's no stats for that. But the most positive thing I can tell you is our clinic visits are back. We're at 3,738. A lot of that's due to the new providers that Carrie's helped recruit and add. So you got to give credit where credit's due there. And you can see that we're able to do more surgeries. So our surgery volume's up slightly in the month of July, about 15 cases. And that's because we're not transferring things out to other hospitals. Our lab tests are up, and I'll give you 3 guesses why the lab tests are up. COVID. Didn't know if I cut out on you guys. Page 11. Again, these are the ratios. Give you it's kind of our scorecard with acid test current. Again, days cash on hand 105 days. Debt service coverage. We're all within the in the bond or debt covenants. Page 12 is a statement of cash flows. Again, ties down to 105 days. And then our scorecard on how we're doing from a billing and collection point. This shows where we are. We're about 115 collecting cash, so that's strong. Our clinic cash collections, we caught those up in the month of August. Again, we did have we just finished our books for August, so going back at this, it's kind of like, hey, would love to tell you more about August, but can't until we let everybody else know. So, again, we're working through our credit balances. We're hitting the things that we need to do on page 13. So, unless anybody has any questions, that's my report.
Thank you, good report.
Thank you,
Thank
Rick.
you.
No questions for Rick? All right, move on, Rob.
For the financial report, our tax deposit this month, the main tax deposit was $154,572.02, and the health services tax was $20,599.54, for a total of $175,171.56. And our current net unrestricted cash is $2.489,799.85. I think that's all I have. Does anybody else have a question?
Any questions for Rob? Thank you, Rob. Facilities, Rob?
Foundation. I'm back up.
Oh, did I miss you? Oh, foundations, I did that last time.
We, last month at the hospital foundation, we approved 2 grants, one to the Mancus Clinic and one to the walk-in clinic. The Mancus Clinic is for a bariatric exam chair table, and the walk-in clinic is for a tonopen, which I actually don't remember what that is, but it's medical equipment that they asked for, and we were able to fund. That's all I have from the foundation.
What was that last one again?
It's called a tonopen. I don't know, I don't recall exactly what it does offhand. I can probably pull it up and tell you now.
What are the amounts on these grants?
The Mancus Clinic was about 4,000, and the walk-in clinic was 2,300. Actually, the walk-in clinic one, we approved it. It could possibly, they may get a refurbished one, so there is still a little bit of flex in what that one could be, but it could be up to like 3,700, I think was the maximum for that.
I think it measures eye pressure.
Yes, that is what it does. Yeah, it measures ocular pressure.
Right.
Job, Tom.
Wow, it's a deep research here, you can do it faster. But, bad news is that I found out in the veterinary site.
Where we're gonna buy these,
But having used eye drops on horses and humans, that was good, so.
Nice job, Tom.
That's all I have.
Okay, sorry to forget you again, I'll try not to.
That's all right.
Facilities, Ralph, I guess you're up.
Okay, so the new RTU one was installed and started up over this last weekend. SHS was able to move their supplies and equipment back into the surgery suite Tuesday morning, and I understand that you did surgeries in there today. So everything is back up and running. There's some issues with test and balance with this new unit. We're not quite sure what's going on. We're gonna have a call tomorrow morning with GARS, the test and balance company, Elite, and George Augustine, and we're gonna try and figure it out. Could be that the new unit is kind of battling RTU3. So there's probably there's probably a simple solution to it, but we'll work through that here hopefully in a day or two and have that fixed.
Ralph, does that put any additional pressure or make the RT3 work any harder? I mean, is there a ripple?
Well, I don't know. I think that there's probably some adjustments that may be necessary to RT3, and it may be running too hard, not putting too much air into the system. So it doesn't surprise me too much that there's some issues with test and balance, but the unit itself started up, is running like a clock. I'm not aware of any other issues with it. The whole process went, I thought, very smoothly. None had a schedule that almost was down to the minute. Everybody was there that needed to be there. You know, it just went almost without a hitch. And so it's in place, it's operating, and that one is pretty much behind us now. So Rob was also there, I know, almost the entire weekend, and he and a couple of his guys were a big help to us. I know that Jamie Rittaller, you know, was there quite a bit through the weekend also, and I don't know who else might have been inside, but it was a good effort on everybody's part. So, good to have that done.
Yeah.
I will also tell you that the retaining wall repair started yesterday. None started taking down the damaged retaining wall section yesterday morning. Most of the work is actually subcontracted to Sprinkler Pros through Nunn. We've moved the wall to the west 18 inches, a foot and a half. And we hope that that will help us avoid having to excavate back into the parking lot, take out curb and gutter, take out asphalt, possibly even take out that light pole up there on top. So hopefully what we've done with moving the wall will save us some money. I expect it to be cheaper than what Nunn quoted. So, and that's it, so, for me.
Okay.
Well, Ralph and Rob, I want to thank you. It really is nice to have professionals in charge of these things. They do go better when you've got people who know what they're doing. So thanks a lot for a good job.
Well, Nunn had a good team on the site, had planned it all out to a degree that I really didn't expect, and I think that's why it went so well. So, and some luck probably played in there too. We were lucky with the weather. We were lucky with the weather, for sure.
Boy, yeah, in the 48 hours, it would have been a story with wind yesterday.
For sure. So, all went very well. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
There's always luck in construction, it's just usually not the good kind.
Yeah.
It's usually not the good kind.
Anybody have any questions for Ralph on facilities? Okay, moving on. So Ralph and I were looking at the irrigation system that we're looking to try to get in this fall, hopefully. Walking around, I noticed that Kyle's building, the landscaping needs to be done. It's pretty bad. So I think it's something that we need to, as MCHD, look at getting a price from somebody to get that landscaped, all the way around. It's pretty bad shape. So, we need to move forward on that at some point, irregardless if we do the irrigation or not. That landscaping try needs to be done either this fall or next spring, I would imagine.
Are there any issues with there still being just like wet soils over there that maybe we should wait as long as we can?
Well, the landscaping right around the building is in pretty good shape. It's out by the street and on the median and on the backside over here. So if we've got moisture out there, we've got some
Then that's a
bigger
bigger
problems
problem.
than landscaping. Yeah, it's a good point. But that landscaping around the building is actually not that bad, so. But as we were walking around, Ralph, I noticed that it needs to be, a lot of the fabric papers pretty much gone, and it's just weeds, and. So we'll probably have to get a design, because the city will require us to get a landscaping design, unfortunately, and then, get that tied in sometime, probably in the spring, I would imagine, by the time we get pricing on that. So we'll probably move forward, get pricing on that, and that kind of ties into the irrigation side. So Ralph and I walked the line a little bit. Ralph has done a lot of legwork trying to get into the, and Keenan, thank you, Keenan, trying to see how we're gonna get irrigation line in there.
All my legwork seems to be going the wrong direction, so.
So the attorneys are battling it out. I think we should just get some equipment and dig a ditch, but I don't think we can quite do that yet. Kenny, you got anything from the city attorney on what they're?
Yeah, so, you know, when we first talked to Keith, you know, and Keith's been real good to work with and all of this. There's, you know, where his residence is and where his head gate is that we were initially discussing tying into, there is a little section of city property that we would have to, this potential irrigation line would go through, before getting back onto Keith's property and then over to the, PUD over here, the hospital PUD. The little section of city property is kind of a big extension of the George Deere Preserve, and before Keith transferred that to the city, it was placed in a conservation easement. So there's a conservation easement, encumbering that little piece. And so the city attorney did go to the conservation easement, it is the Montezuma County Conservation Land Conservancy District, and they, are certainly willing to look at a proposal. They want a pretty detailed proposal of exactly what we plan to do, how we plan to get everything back exactly the way it was, and then they will go out and they will do basically a study, and it's gonna get a little bit more complicated if they determine that any of the proposed plan would disrupt a wetland, which I believe the route would have to be pretty well planned out on our end to hopefully, avoid all wetlands. Kind of, I think, in a straight line according to what the Land Conservancy District is looking at. You know, if we were to go from Keith's Head Gate straight across, that we would technically be, crossing a wetland. So that process, they weren't very descriptive on exactly, I don't really think it needed to be an engineered plan, but it needed to be a pretty detailed plan for the Land Conservancy District to, determine whether they would allow it in the conservation. Probably my biggest concern in it is, I don't think this line, if it went down this route, would necessarily need a ton of maintenance, but every time we did maintenance, we would be in this same deal dealing with the, conservation easement and having to be sure everything, if we need to go in there and repair something with the pipe, then we're gonna be in this same situation, having to go to Land Conservancy, submit a plan for the repair, and not just a plan for how the repair is gonna be done, but how the remediation is gonna be done to get everything back, as it was. And if all of that makes it through the Land Conservancy, then we would go to City Council, and Mike said that's gonna be about a 3-month process, because it needs they would actually have to pass an ordinance, because it is the city, they grant an easement, then that's the city transferring land. So they actually have to go through the formal ordinance process, because they can't transfer city land without that.
I thought he had an easement through here already.
Keith thought he had an easement through there.
Oh. Of course.
Yeah. He has an easement, it's called a conservation easement.
He told me he had a utility easement.
So there is, in the conservation easement, he reserved the right to pull some stuff, subject to the conservation easement. And the city in the conservation easement is saying he doesn't have the right to give that easement to other parties. And even if he wanted to do it, he'd have to comply with the conservation easement. He couldn't just do whatever he wanted through there. There's quite a bit of terms in the conservation easement thing. You gotta give them notice and submit a plan, do all that. So,
But is there another option, a non-conservation easement option?
So, that, Ralph and I had a pretty good discussion about all this, and, I know that Ralph was trying to get a hold of Brandon Johnson and MBI, and I don't know if you were able to really discuss that with him at all.
I was, and there isn't. The short answer is there isn't. The only place to come off is Keith Evans' property. Now, it is conceivable, Keith Evans' joint pipeline. It's conceivable that the place we tie in could be moved west to try and avoid this wetlands. The wetland is, you can see it from the road out there, there's actually water, standing water. There's a pond there, cattails and reeds growing up out of it. I don't know how far it extends to the west, how far we'd have to go to get around it. I think that you would actually probably come onto the hospital property right here at the property line between the EMS building and Hiles. There's two lots in here. There's two lots in here and then Hiles lot. We sit on two lots here. And we have a utility easement right down the east side of the lot that we're sitting on right now. So you'd probably come onto the property right here at the edge of the gravel between us and this parking lot out here. And then have to come across and get into the north side of the existing irrigation system. That can be done. We can tie in, hopefully very close along this north sidewalk that runs east and west here, the north side of the hospital site. I think we're probably looking at 800 to 1,000 lineal feet of pipeline to get in here. I've talked to a wetlands expert, and I've talked to a designer. I've talked to Keith Evans a couple times. I've talked to a landscape guy, and I think we're looking at north of $100,000 to do this. I think it's going to be every bit of that, and that's without really knowing what the construction part is going to look like. And that includes, Dean, you've mentioned before, $25,000, I think, for the water, for the shares of water, and another maybe $10,000 or $15,000 to try to access the pipeline. So those costs are included in what I've kind of tried to sketch out. The first thing I would want to do is to bring in an environmental guy to tell us how far the wetlands go and where we can put this line without compromising them. And then I'd want to do some design, or I'd want to have some design done, we'd have to have a survey crew, we'd have to have the legal description and something to give the city. And Keenan, you and I really didn't get into what all they want in their package, but, it's something we can do if it's worth the money. I did look at SHS water bills for the last 12 months, and there is a meter, and I think there's only one meter, but there is a meter that serves just that irrigation system. And in the last 12 months, you've used city water to irrigate out there 6 of those 12 months, and the total cost of that has been about $18,000. So about $3,000 a month for the 6 months that you are pulling city water to water the grass. So your cost, at least over the last 12 months, from June of 2019 to June of 2020, was $17,800 about, so $18,000.
5 to 6 year payback, roughly.
If we keep it under $100,000.
Yeah. No, I don't think it would be more than that.
Well, now, you had talked about, it probably cost north of $100,000, and then you said plus the $25,000 divided.
No,
there.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so the $100,000 includes
The $100,000 includes,
$25,000.
For the shares.
it includes, 15,000 to buy into the pipeline, 25,000 to buy the water. And I'm saying that 100,000 is the smallest number,
Okay,
okay?
so it,
I think it'll go over that.
okay, so payback is 5 or more years before.
And then there may be some more that, I mean, obviously there's gonna be a little bit of costs, pretty minuscule yearly costs. Ralph, one question I had in those numbers was how much of that water was used when MBI is shut off? I mean, like before April 15th and after October 15th. I mean, I'm sure they start watering before April 15th, and they probably sometimes want to water after October 15th.
It's a little hard to tell. There was a bill, a city water bill for the period of March 18th through April 16th of this year for $10,000. So sometime during that period of time, we started pulling city water to water the grass. Might have been the 1st of April, I don't know. And there was a water bill that went September 17th to October 16th last fall. So, and that was a smaller one too. That was 500,000 gallons. Well, we pulled 5.4 million gallons from the city in the last 12 months. And it went from sometime March, April to sometime last year. I probably didn't say that very well. We shut off, we stopped getting water from the city last fall in the September, October timeframe. Can't tell you when, but in that billing period, and we started back up pulling water through that meter in the mid-March to mid-April timeframe this spring.
So some of that water that we're discussing would have been used before or after MVI was even available.
Would have been.
You might just stop, you might just work on MBI schedule, like any other pasture or hay meadow. You water when you have water and you don't when you don't.
Well, to a certain extent.
No,
But,
to 100% extent, that's how my grass is grown.
well,
I can tell you right now, I don't water if there's no water. Period.
this thing about we want the place to look decent, too.
Sure, I appreciate
Uh,
that. You're saying that you can water and your grass will come back, especially if you water 24/7 as opposed to only watering at night. So you can work around that schedule. I see what you're saying, you're gonna still have, you might have some costs in the spring and the fall. But if you know you have irrigation, you just don't turn it on until irrigation is done. But,
And with this estimate of $100,000 or so, we also know about the Peter's principal axiom, that says, things will cost twice as much and, take twice as long as, anticipated. So it'll probably be more than 100,000, I mean, just the way things work. RTV one wasn't supposed to cost about, $1 million either. It was like 980,000, but, you know how things go. That's getting a lot more expensive than $5,000 we were talking about for one share early on, and we do need to consider that. I mean, we've already got some cost in attorney's fees, in Ralph's fees. Those are costs too. How many hours do we want them to spend on this before we say, this is too expensive?
We're obviously gonna do what the district directs us to do, and Kelly and I were talking about it, and Dean, I don't think, you know, when you very first, I think it was you that kind of brought up this idea on, and when I look at a head gate right over there and pulling over MVI, I'm thinking, man, that's in my opinion, kind of a no-brainer. You know, get into it and throw a conservation easement in the mix, and it you know, it complicates things a little bit, and I kind of mentioned this to Ralph, and Kelly and I were discussing it, and I am not a landscape guy, so you know, we didn't know if there was some other options to save a whole lot of money on water through more efficient landscaping.
well, you could landscape it, but you're probably gonna spend $50,000 in landscaping to save $50,000 in water. I mean, I can't answer. I mean, we may have to ask SHS to cost share with us. I mean, it's a saving to them. We're just providing it. We get no savings out of this whatsoever.
Yeah.
If we're saving SHS $20,000 a year, and we say, can we split this 50-50, then it's a lot more palatable for both sides to do something like that. We just don't know what the costs are gonna be. But 5 years from now, if you don't have water, and the city's charging you twice as much to water your grass, and you're spending $40,000 a year for water, you sure wish you would have put irrigation water on your property as opposed to saying, no, I don't wanna do that. And it's not my call.
We'll discuss, we'll bring that to the board, SHS board.
I think it may be an option. Water's not gonna get cheaper. It's gonna get more expensive.
No, that's a good investment.
Yeah, and the city's just gonna keep regulating how much you can water. If you have a bad drought year, you may not be able to water 3 days a week. You won't keep the grass wet, dry, or green. I don't care what you do, unless you have irrigation water. And so, I just think it's a forward-thinking thing.
We'll try and bring at least a tentative, or obviously the board would have to vote on it, but I think by the facilities meeting, we could have an idea of what we might be able to ask the board that we would contribute.
Yeah. I mean, it's ultimately up to SHS. If you wanna say really MCHD, we don't really care probably. We're not spending the
We don't
money.
write that $80,000 check every year.
Exactly, we're not spending the water, or spending the money on water, you guys are. But after this year's drought, next year probably could be the same or worse. It could be,
Pleistocine's coming back.
yeah, it could be real ugly, water-wise.
That can affect MVI water too, if it
It will.
bad enough. I know that's, but I hear what you're saying, and I think that's a really good point in that odds are MVI water is always gonna be, once it's purchased and put into place, a whole lot cheaper than city water.
Well, you're talking $300 a year
Yeah.
compared to 20,000 a year in usage. So, and you're getting, 100% more water. You water 24/7 as opposed to, I don't know what you're watering now, you probably water from 5 to at night till 10 in the morning. Yeah, and if they start restricting days, now you can be back to 3 days a week. They did that a few years ago, only water certain days of the week, so,
We'll bring it to the board.
yeah.
Well, I'd like to see it happen, but it's getting more expensive than what we thought when we started.
Oh, yeah, it's, that conservation easement is gonna make it, is what it's gonna cost, having to get through that.
Same old thing, you know about the cram down. Is that going through the area or around the area?
It's gonna go through
That was
the
going-
conservation easement, but it's not gonna go through the wetlands.
Gotcha.
So we'll find a way around the wetlands. It may add some length, it may add some difficulty some other way. I also don't know where the rock is out there, because there is sandstone that lays under this whole valley here, and we drilled and shot some up here. We had foundations that were in rock on the MLB and on the new patient lane. And, my next step would be, if you want me to go forward with this, I'd like to bring, the company name is EcoSphere, they're out of Durango, and I've worked with them before. Bring a guy over and do a site survey and tell me where we would be avoiding any problems with wetlands or anything else. I don't know if there will be a archaeological survey required. I don't have that in here anywhere, but generally, if you're gonna disturb otherwise undisturbed property, undisturbed land, particularly maybe if it's a easement, it's a conservation easement, we may have to do a cultural, archaeological survey. Wouldn't be very far there, but could be that.
You know, is that a wetland from stormwater retention, or is it
Well,
just
it
runoff
appears,
irrigation?
it appears to be there all the time.
Okay.
It shows up on Google Map pictures, and it appears to be something that's more than just seasonal. Okay.
I mean, Brandon's Gate used to be a swamp.
Yeah.
Wetland.
Yeah, wetlands, sorry. And that drained across, so,
Had to go somewhere.
all those houses over there are on, my mom talks about it being a swamp, but wetlands, sorry. When she was,
You added like 25% of the value of it by saying wetlands.
so, yeah, I know. But, yeah, so, it's possible to build and do things there once you get past it, but,
Ralph, I guess maybe, I think that's a good direction. I wouldn't mind maybe seeing if they're gonna come over, just having the land conservancy district, and maybe even the city there at the same time, just.
I'll get with you tomorrow and get contact information from those folks so that I can coordinate something.
Okay.
I've had some interest, guys are looking at fall work and winter work, and that's a good winter project, or late fall.
Mhm.
So I don't know when we're looking to put an RFP out to get bids, but,
Well, according to Mike, even if everything was good to go right now, we're 3 months out on the city, giving us a new.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's like when we started the patient wing.
yeah, in the middle of the winter.
Yeah. You did this for your pipeline in January when it's frozen to 3 feet down.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll get it started.
Does anybody has any more questions or concerns? You didn't have your attorney report.
That pretty much was my attorney. I didn't have anything, Kelly and I did have a discussion today, we are, still working on the insurance money, for the retaining wall. We're just looking for a consent to, well, we need the insurance company to give us that, all their documentation, they have SHS's insurance company give us a consent to settle. It's just paperwork, so. That's about it.
Okay, any questions for Keenan, attorney?
We didn't really have a plan.
Okay, I guess I'd make a motion for adjournment.
Not so moved.
All right, any opposed? All in favor? All right,
Who was the motion and the second?
what's that?
Who was the motion?
Fred's motion and Bill seconded.
Quick.
All in favor?
Yeah, all in favor. Sorry.
Parliamentarians.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's better. Yeah,
She's with the drive next week, she's pretty fair on drive. So. What was your question?
I just recall it was a state forest.
Yeah. That's what I said.
I'm sorry.
Although when you were talking about when you wear the chili peppers out.
I'll check with her.
Oh,
I'm
but
trying
hang
to get you home quick, Caleb. Just trying to get you home.
All right.
Hey, thanks, guys. Y'all have a good night.